At a dusty gas station on the outskirts of a sleepy highway town, an old German shepherd sat alone beside the pump, eyes fixed on the road as if waiting for someone who would never return. His name was Buck, though no one there knew it yet. Buck had once been a loyal companion, riding everywhere with his family, his head out the window, ears flapping joyfully in the wind. But on that fateful day, during a quick stop to refuel and grab snacks, his owners drove off without him. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe they were just tired, but they never came back. The gas station attendant, a teenager named Miguel, watched the confused dog chase after the car, barking until the tires disappeared into the horizon. For hours, Buck stayed by the gas pump, tail low, pacing, panting in the heat. People came and went. Some tossed him scraps, others honked at him to move. No one stopped. That was until an elderly man named Arthur, who was traveling back to his hometown after visiting his late wife's grave, pulled up to the station. Arthur noticed the dog immediately. The way he didn't beg, just waited, with quiet heartbreak in his eyes. He bought a bottle of water and a sandwich and gently approached. "You waiting for someone, old boy?" Arthur asked, kneeling down. Buck looked at him and wagged his tail weakly. Arthur fed him, poured water into his cupped hands, and watched the dog drink with desperate thirst. The station attendant came out and said, "He's been here 2 days, got left behind. I don't think they're coming back." Arthur sat on the curb for a long time, the dog beside him. Memories of his own dog, lost years ago, flooded back. He saw in Buck not just an abandoned animal, but a soul clinging to love. And so, without hesitation, he opened the door to his old truck and said, "Come on then, you've waited long enough." Buck didn't hesitate. He jumped in like he'd been waiting for that exact invitation all his life. What followed was the most unexpected companionship. Buck brought back laughter into Arthur's quiet life. He became his shadow, his protector, his reason to wake up early and walk again. But the story doesn't end there. Months later, Arthur took Buck to a vet for a routine checkup. They scanned Buck for a chip, and to their surprise, it beeped. The vet found Buck's old records. The owners were located, but what they said shocked everyone. "We gave that dog away months ago. We didn't want him anymore." They had no interest in taking him back. Arthur stood silently for a moment, then looked at the vet and simply said, "Good. He's mine now." Buck wagged his tail as if he understood. The abandoned gas station had once been a place of heartbreak, but now, thanks to one kind heart, it became the starting point of a new life. A story of neglect transformed into a bond that neither age nor past pain could ever undo. As days turned into weeks, Arthur and Buck became inseparable. Every morning, the old man would sip his coffee on the porch while Buck lay by his feet, basking in the early sun. They would go on slow walks through the park, where children often ran up to pet the gentle dog, and neighbors would smile and nod, recognizing the once-forgotten dog who had found a home again. Arthur, who had spent years in solitude since his wife's passing, now found joy in the smallest things, like the sound of Buck's paws trailing behind him, or the way Buck nudged his hand when he forgot to take his arthritis pills. But then came the winter, harsh, early, and cruel. One night, Arthur collapsed in his home, unconscious from a sudden stroke. The house was quiet. No one knew. But Buck did. He barked, whined, scratched at the doors, but no help came. Then, in the early morning hours, Buck did something remarkable. He dragged a blanket from the living room and laid it over Arthur. He licked his face. Still no response. So he used his strength to push open the slightly ajar back door and ran. He ran through the snow-covered streets, barking desperately, stopping only when he saw a mail truck at the edge of town. The driver, startled, recognized Buck from the walks with Arthur. Sensing something was wrong, he followed the dog, who led him all the way back to the house. An ambulance was called. Arthur was saved, just in time. The doctors said another hour alone, and it would have been too late. News of the loyal dog who saved his owner spread quickly. Local papers ran the headline, "Gas Station, Dog Becomes Hero." Children at the park started calling him Brave Buck. The town raised funds for Buck's vet care, toys and treats. A mural was even painted in town square, a man in a rocking chair with a loyal dog at his side. Arthur recovered slowly, but with Buck there, each step felt lighter. He would smile and say, "That dog didn't just save my life, he gave it meaning." And Buck, he never needed a collar again. The whole town knew where he belonged. They had each been forgotten in their own way. An old man with a quiet house and a dog left behind at a gas station. But together, they proved that sometimes the family we choose finds us when we least expect it. Spring returned to the small town, bringing with it blossoms, warmth, and renewed life. Arthur, now walking with a cane, often found himself surrounded by curious strangers who had read Buck's story online. The tale of the abandoned gas station dog who became a hero had gone viral. A news crew came out one afternoon to interview them both, and as Buck sat calmly beside Arthur, the old man gently stroked his head and said, "He didn't just save me. He reminded me what it feels like to be needed." What no one knew, though, was that Buck's health had started to decline. He was getting older, his legs stiffer, his eyes a little cloudier. Arthur noticed it, of course. He made more frequent vet visits, stayed up on cold nights beside Buck's bed, and whispered soft words of love into the loyal dog's ears. He'd always say, "I'm here now. I won't leave you like they did." One night, Buck lay beside the fire, his breathing shallow. Arthur sat next to him, holding his paw, and then Buck looked up at Arthur with the softest eyes, full of peace, loyalty, and gratitude, then gently rested his head and let go. Arthur wept like he hadn't in years. But Buck's story didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, people from around the country sent letters, toys, and donations to shelters in Buck's name. The town decided to build a small bronze statue in front of the gas station where Buck had been left, depicting a dog sitting patiently, eyes full of hope. A plaque below read, "For every soul who's been left behind, may you find someone who sees your worth." Arthur began visiting schools, talking to children about compassion, responsibility, and what it truly means to love an animal. He brought a photo of Buck to every talk, held to his heart like a medal of honor. And though Buck was gone, his spirit lived on, in the lives he touched, the hearts he healed, and the man he saved. They say dogs don't live as long as people because they already know how to love unconditionally. Buck had proved that. He was more than a dog. He was a miracle, and his story, born out of neglect and abandonment, became a legend of love, second chances, and unwavering loyalty. The seasons cycled once more, and on the anniversary of Buck's passing, the small town held its first Buck's Day at the local animal shelter. Children came with their parents, shelters waived adoption fees, and volunteers wore shirts with Buck's face and the words, "Love doesn't abandon." The statue at the gas station had become a local landmark. People left flowers, dog toys, and notes beneath it, some thanking Buck for helping them choose adoption over buying, some simply saying they believed again in kindness because of him. Arthur still walked the same paths each morning, now accompanied by a young rescue dog he'd named Chance. Chance was different. more playful, a bit clumsy, but he had the same eyes that looked to Arthur with complete trust. It wasn't about replacing Buck. It was about continuing the love that Buck had started. One afternoon, a young boy approached Arthur during a park walk. The boy had read Buck's story in school. He reached out and patted Chance gently. "Is this Buck?" the boy asked. Arthur smiled, knelt beside him, and placed a gentle hand on the dog's back. "No, this is Chance, but Buck helped me find him, and now Chance is helping me keep going." The boy thought for a moment, then said, "I think Buck would be really proud." Arthur's eyes misted over. "I think so too." The wind whispered softly through the trees, and for a moment Arthur could almost feel Buck beside him, silent, strong, and faithful as ever. The love hadn't ended. It had simply changed form. And through every dog saved, every child taught kindness, and every heart touched by the story of a forgotten dog left at a gas station, Buck's spirit still walked the world. The story of Buck had traveled farther than anyone could have imagined. It was picked up by a local journalist, then a national one. Soon, animal lovers across the world knew of the loyal dog who waited at a gas station, the man who gave him a home, and the way Buck changed hearts just by being himself. Arthur, now older and a bit slower on his feet, never stopped sharing Buck's story. He visited schools, shelters, and community events. But one morning, he received a letter that caught him off guard. It came from a woman in another state. Her name was Emma. Her husband had left their dog behind during a move. She was devastated, ashamed, and unsure if her pet would survive. Then she read Buck's story. Her letter read, "I drove 6 hours back to find him. He was still waiting in the same spot. I hugged him and promised never to fail him again. I owe that moment to Buck. He saved not just my dog, but my heart." Arthur sat with the letter pressed against his chest, a tear sliding down his cheek. Buck had never barked a word, yet his story echoed louder than anything else Arthur had ever known. Eventually, a non-profit was created in Buck's name, Buck's Promise, dedicated to rescuing abandoned pets, advocating for responsible pet ownership, and offering education programs for children. Every dog they saved wore a little blue tag on their collar with a single engraved phrase, "Never forgotten." Arthur spent his final years surrounded by people who believed in that promise. On his last day, as the sun painted his room gold, Chance lay at his feet, just as Buck once had. Arthur whispered, "Tell him I kept my word." He passed peacefully, a photograph of Buck beside his bed. And every year, on the day Buck was found at that gas station, people across towns and cities light candles in windows, post photos of their adopted pets, and say out loud to no one in particular, "Thank you, Buck." Because sometimes the smallest acts of loyalty leave the biggest legacy.